Here I've got the latest in Cre8audio and Pittsburgh Modular's collaboration. It's the Program, which is a 12-track MIDI and CV sequencer. That can be standalone, like it is here, or you can put it into your Eurorack system. Just unscrew these 4 screws and pop it in. It's the same format as the Boom Chick drum machine and the assembler mixer, and just like both of those, it hides an awful lot of functionality in what is a pretty simple interface. Down here on the left, we've got the 12 channels. We've got 8 on the bottom for drums, and above those, we've got 4 melodic tracks for synths. And the drums have all got a CV trigger output. Synths tracks 1 and 2 have got pitch CV, a gate CV plus an additional CV. So we've got 3 outs for each of those. Over here on the right hand side, we've got TRS MIDI in and out using Type A TRS MIDI plugs. Got a clock in, a clock out, a reset in, a reset out, and also this chance in. And this is combined with a chance amount parameter that we've got down here to control the amount of variation on each of the settings of these orange knobs. So you can have CV control of variations. Don't worry, this will all become clear in a minute. But yeah, we've got these orange knobs across the top, and these are used to control pair step parameters or values and pair track parameters and values. Things like note length, micro shifting, ratchets, pitch, and we can also send the CV out on those first 2 synth tracks and can set some drum accent levels on MIDI. So all in all, it's pretty deep. And on the table in front of me, I'm controlling the DRM1 from Vermona via MIDI, the East Beasts MIDI. The only one actually that's set up at the minute for CV is the Nix. This is MIDI, and the Breeze 6 is MIDI. And I'm using the Breeze 6 because we can play chords on this. In the melodic tracks, we've got different modes. If we hit one of the sequences, hit the value, so mono, ARP, Chord, or Chiptune, and you'll notice there that there are some sort of hieroglyphics going on. It all sort of makes sense once you get used to it. So all the values, so BPM for example, alt and tempo, change the value, you can see the BPM change in there. It looks a bit weird when you first get it, but actually those numbers are pretty easy to understand. I'll run you through the interface first and show you how it all works. We've got 2 main modes, step mode and live mode. So step mode's XOX mode, live mode is playing along. We've got mute here, so we can mute all the tracks. They're all muted now because they're lit. Let's unmute some. So we select the tracks on the left. If we're in step mode, for example, we can see what's been programmed on the tracks. And in live mode, of course, we're on sequencer 1 there on live mode. Just make sure that record isn't on. This is set up to be the same on the left and the right, but one's a minor scale, one's a major scale. We have keys and scales. I'll show that again in a second. And yes, we do have chords, like I said. So if we go to sequencer 3, that's the Breeze 6. If I go into chord mode, so if I hit the sequencer track, we get the different modes for it for the melodic one. So that's mono, that's ARP, that's chord, and that's chiptune. But if I put it in chord mode, so it's not a standard chord mode like you'd get on a synth where you play a simple chord and then it repeats it. These are musically interesting chords based on the key and the scale. So alternate key, we can change the key. And then alternate and scale is where we set either chromatic, major, minor, whole tone, or pentatonic scales. And if we hit alternate and key and scale and just that track, we're doing it for just that track. So that's on C, and then alternate scale. This is on, let's put that on pentatonic and put sequencer 1, for example, alternate and sequencer 1. Alternate and key and scale, there we go. And then the key of that, we can put that in something else. But we'll put it back on C so it all plays okay. And the alternate is also a little bit like a back button. So if you're in mute mode, for example, come out of mute. If you're in clear mode, I'll show that in a second, come out of that. It brings you back to your main play mode. And if nothing is selected on the right-hand side, so if we're in step mode and we're not looking at any of the steps, these 6 knobs function to adjust things on the track itself. So on the drums, for example, go to drum 4, and we change the value. This is the MIDI value of that. So that's note 42, 43, 44. Put it back where it should be. 42, can I get there? Oh, and you'll notice it picks up where you are. So the scaling of them can be a bit awkward if something's near the end of a scale. So if you set on something like 126 and you've only got to go 128, just spin it all the way back and up again so that you've got the full range. It's quite a clever way of doing it, because if you'll notice that obviously there's no screen on this. So if you want to know what's happening on a particular step, for example, if you hit the step, hit it again, flashes fast, and now we can see what the shift value was, for example, and it was on no shift. Because as you touch it, it shows you what it's on. But that does mean that if it's over here, for example, we're now all the way to the far left, so we don't have much leeway. So just give it a wiggle so that you can then get it back to where you want it to be. So that just gives you more resolution to dial it in. And each of these knobs has a slightly different function, or some different functions, depending on if you're in melodic mode or if you're on the drum tracks, or if you're in chord mode, for example. So if we put, let's go to sequencer 3, let's put sequencer 3 into chord mode. It's in chord mode there. If we go into the steps, let's look at step 1, and then we can hold Alt on this, and this will show you what chord it's set on. And these are very hieroglyphic, so you have to try and work those out. Like you can see, there's a minor 7th and minor 9th. I don't know what that is, 7/5. Major, is that minor? But it's all in the manual, obviously, but just play around and see what it sounds like. If I take all these off for a second. It's on mute. So we come back into that, change that, let's turn all this down. I'm adjusting that one there. Hopefully you get the idea. I'll put this back onto mono mode, which is where it should be. So sequencer 3, mono mode, and let's put all those steps back in. It will remember what they were. So yeah, as I say, these do different things depending on what sort of track you're in. But let's go into hi-hat, for example. So let's just mute everything else. Turn that up. So it's drum 8 that we're going to be looking at, and that's the one that's playing. So step mode, drum 8, double click that, and now we're editing this step, so let's put a ratchet on it. That's pretty much how simple it is. Let's only play this every other bar, so let's put the condition on, it'll only play the first of 2. So it won't play the next time. As I say, pretty simple. Let's put it on, it'll only play 1 in every 4 bars. 2 is that. I'll play this next one coming up. So whatever's flashing is whatever you're editing. Let's put that back on full. Let's take the ratchets off. So you've got after the beat ratchets or before the beat ratchets. So that's 3 beats or 3 hits as it comes into the beat, as opposed to 3 strikes after the beat. And obviously, if you're in a melodic mode, you can change the pitch. And then hitting alternate gives us an extra level of control with these, which is then sort of like a randomization or a variation on those ratchets now. So let's hear what happens. So it's given different amount of ratchets every time. Turn the variation right up. So loads of things to play with in there. It's worth showing this actually as well. With the drums, obviously you set the MIDI note for the drum using, just hold that down and turn your value. That was 47, was it? Let's get it back on 47. There we go. Can you find it? There it is. So. But you'll notice it's playing a closed and an open hat. And on these, we've got secondary function over here, which is the pitch. And this is playing note 49, you'll see. And you can set that up using drum 8 and change that to 49. I've lost it, 90 odd. Come back. So this is now setting the secondary MIDI note for that track that you access via the pitch knob. So the pitch knob does something even on the drum tracks. So yeah, you've got 2 different MIDI notes you can play with the track. So you could have 2 toms, 2 congas, or like I've got here, 2 hats. And it just so happens that the Theorem does take 2 different MIDI notes to have an open hat and a closed hat, which was handy. Out of mute, go to drum 6, to drum 6. Let's have a little play with these claps actually. Let's change the length of that. So we'll alternate and pattern length. Let's have it as the hats, which were they on? They were on 6, weren't they? So let's put that, it was on 32. Let's have it on 16. Come out of there again. That's been programmed for 4 beats. If you want to play that over 8 beats, we can alternate, extend pattern, and it's drum 6, and we're going to extend it to, I'm just trying to get it so you can see what's happening here, to 32, 31, 32, there we go, and then come out of there, and there we go, it's extended it rather than just added blank spaces. If you wanted to add blank spaces, you can, so alternating pattern length, let's go to drum 6, pattern length, let's put it on 64, so it'll play the 2 bars, and then it'll play nothing. Go to page 2. Page 2. Got a quantize function, so if you've played live, you can quantize, so alt and quantize, and then you set the amount of quantization, so throw on 100% there. Obviously, I've not played that live. Clock divisions, key and scale we've seen, but hopefully you get an understanding of how you navigate this and what it can do. Let's go into sequencer track now. Let's have a listen to that. Put it on. So in sequencer 1, page 2. So if we come into this note here, double click, let's throw it up an octave. Get the idea again, hopefully. Let's go to page 2 and do the same there, octave up. Same there, octave up. And if we go into live mode, as I showed earlier. In fact, let's have a little play with sequencer 3, because that's controlling the Breeze 6, which is polyphonic. So again, let's just change this into let's try it as an ARP, shall we? So play. Make sure we're not muted. Yeah, we are. So let's go into that track itself and just take everything off. To clear it, actually, this is quite nice. To clear the track, clear, sequencer 3, it's cleared. So you can clear different things. So if you wanted to clear the knob functions, for example, you'd clear sequencer 3 and then the shift functions, and it's cleared that. Clear sequencer 3 the ratchets, and it clears the ratchets. As I've cleared sequencer 3, it's now got no parameters in there whatsoever. So I'll need to tell it I want it to be an ARP again. So now we're in ARP mode, go to live mode, and if we play something, we won't hear anything because we're in ARP mode. So we need to play something, make sure that we're not recording. Okay, so we can record that. There's a little bug in this at the minute in that it records everything an octave lower in the chord mode or the ARP mode, but that's being fixed. But you get the idea. If we go to step mode, so you can see it's full. Let's put it into the chiptune mode now. So sequencer 3, oh, come out of clear, sequencer 3, chiptune. Now this works like the chord mode, so you only got to press one key to play the notes, but it's like an ARP, so that you've got to be playing in order to hear it. So that's the difference between the ARP mode, the chord mode, and the chiptune mode. Let's take a look at the grooves now, and we'll try it on a hi-hat. Just do something really simple on the hi-hat. So what the groove does is it adds variations on each of the knobs, and if I just put the groove on, you'll see what I mean. If I shift and groove, and then drum 8, and you can see the different groove patterns there. So that's per bar. Let's make it, there we go, let's do that. So it's going to gradually increase the variations that we put on each of those. So it's come out of the groove. If you notice that after a few seconds, it pops out whatever mode you're in. So alternate groove, drum 8, and we'll go to the shift. So we'll add some time to that shift. So it'll get sloppier through the bar and then back again. Come out of there. So yeah, so that's adding some sort of swing, isn't it? So Alt Groove 8, let's turn it up. Let's add some ratchets to that. So back into the groove, drum 8, groove menu. So it's increasing the amount of ratchets in there. Again, let's do the shift. Take the ratchets back down to 0. Get it onto 0. But you can hear we've definitely got a little groove in there. And that works with all those different parameters on all those different knobs. So it's like swing plus. Let's take a look at generate patterns now. And what generate patterns does, it'll generate sort of grooves and variations, but it does it intelligently because it knows what sort of drum you're on. So it knows this is a kick, or it has decided that's a kick, that's a snare, that's a close, that's an open hat, stuff like that. So if we go to alternate generate pattern, if we go to drum 8, we've got different types of patterns. Straight, mathy time, syncopated time, and generative time. And each of those changes the underlying rhythm of the pattern generator depending on what you've selected. So let's take a look at it again. Generate pattern, let's pick mathy time. See what that does. I'm already in generate pattern mode, so I need to select the tracks I want to create, and I'll pick all the drums for now. In fact, let's put it on straight so we don't get any mad surprises. So just hang on for a second, wait for it to figure it out. Finally, let's take a look at loading and saving. So we load by going to the sequencer button, and we've got 2 pages. So we've got 2 pages of 64, so sequencer there. There's ones I've saved so far already. Well, this is the one that we had loaded. Let's play that again. So I do have others saved in there, but obviously the sounds and everything's completely different. But let's see what happens when I hit that one. So you can figure that there was something vaguely musical in there at some point. To save, Alt and sequence, and then just hit wherever you want to save it. So come out of that. And then we've got things like copy. So let's copy one sequence to another. So Alt, copy, sequencer 1, throw in sequencer 3. That's done. So there you have it, the program from Cre8audio. It's a nice little sequencer that sits somewhere between something like the Novation Launchpad and much more complex, more expensive sequencers like the OXI One. If you don't need all those extra features and would like something compact, then this is definitely worth taking a look at. My only minor reservation is with the brightness of the LEDs. They're fine in the studio, and I imagine they'd work well on stage, but in daylight, it can be a little bit hard to read. So in here, where I've been working, for example, I've got light coming in from all sides. It could be difficult when the sun was out. Down at the other end of the room, it was fine. As with anything like this, though, it takes a while to become fluent and get that muscle memory going, and I'd like to have the option of a simpler chord mode. Although the chords it offers up are interesting and encourage musical exploration, if you know what you want, it can be a bit of a chore programming it every step. But it did lead me to use some unusual chord structures I wouldn't normally use in those little demos that I played, and I'll play those in full at the end of this video, so stick around to hear those. And I put them together really to show you what you could do with something like this if you were doing a live set, for example. I didn't go from sequence to sequence, didn't use the song mode. It does have a song mode, and I've just realised I've not demoed it. But yeah, I didn't want to go into absolutely every single function you've got on this, all the different clears and all the different ratchets and all the different things that happen in the art mode, the chord mode and stuff like that. I just wanted to give you a good idea of what it does, because the manual is packed full of information and it'd just be a far too long a video, I think, and get extremely boring. So hopefully that wasn't boring. Hopefully it was of some use to somebody somewhere. And if it was, please do subscribe, ring the bell, join me over on Patreon. I've got patches, samples, I've got tutorials, other little bits and bobs there as well. And also do take a look at my startyourcard.com website. Again, patches and samples, stuff you can buy, free bits and bobs. And as I always say, even if you just pick up some of the cheaper bits and bobs, it really does all help to support the channel. Well, thanks for staying to the very end. Well, almost the very end. Stick around and take a listen to those demos because they're quite nice and it shows what this thing can do. And I will see you next time.